episode of Surviving the Survivor, we bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
She was broken, not about to tell people about her marital struggles. Those are the words of defense attorney Ashley Whittam during opening statements yesterday. And today, the defense taking a much more aggressive approach to this entire case. We're about to dig into it. Welcome to Surviving the Survivor. It is the true crime show that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime. And it is not a tagline. It is our reality here. It is day 2 of the James Craig murder trial out in Arapahoe County, Colorado, otherwise known for the Aurora Theater shooting. We have the DA who prosecuted that case back for another day here. It's already, this case, becoming one of the wildest ones that we have ever covered here at STS. You've got it all. You've got a wife who is dead from poison, a husband who was searching the internet for how to make a murder look like a heart attack. You've got an alleged murder for hire plot from jail against a lead detective. You've got a defense attorney charged with arson right now, and of course, the prerequisite affair that all these cases seem to happen. Let's bring in the best guest. One of them having a bit of a tough time, I think, getting on, but you met him yesterday, and he is back today. It is George H. Brockler, the former Arapahoe County DA, now a DA in the adjacent county, I believe, back for day 2 of analysis. And then we've got Sky Lazaro here, a formidable criminal defense attorney out of the great state of Utah, who, for you guys out in the true crime world, you know her because she was defending Corey Richins. No longer. Corey Richins set to go on trial in 2026, but she stands accused of murdering her husband, Eric Richins, with 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl. So it's not every day you get the DA from the county where this is happening and a criminal defense attorney who is representing a woman accused in a poisoning death. And then we've got our third guest having a little trouble getting on right now, but Stefan Tubbs, no doubt, will join us, a longtime Denver radio host, and he is host of the podcast related to this very case called Arsenic DDS. And James Craig was Stefan Tubbs's dentist, which is odd but true. And you can't get much closer to the source than that. So we're going to have the patient on as soon as he can get on here. And why is the trial not streamed? Let's throw that right to George Brockler. George, I mean, this is supposed to be a transparent country, democracy, where we see how the open courts work. How come we're not allowed to see this trial?
Well, you are. And what happens is there is a Colorado judicial live streaming website where you can stream almost everything that goes on. The court in this particular case has put it on a different platform called WebEx. And so if you were to Google Colorado Judicial WebEx, you would come to a different website, but the same process. You would go to Arapahoe County. This is all taking place in courtroom 201, and this may be of some interest. This isn't just the same county where the Aurora Theater case was tried. We tried it in that exact same courtroom. That's the same courtroom. So it's courtroom 201. It says Judge Michelle Amico, who's the chief judge. That's fake. They use this courtroom for the big trials, and it's really Shea Whitaker, who's the judge. But if you get in there, the difference is with Colorado live streaming, you can watch anonymously. This one you can't. You got to type in your name, and there's someone there that kind of monitors who's in. But you can watch every part of this trial. I've had it on in the background in my office the last 2 days.
That is interesting. WebEx, yeah. I don't know. We have not been able. We're certainly not allowed to stream it publicly. Whether we can watch it, I have not tried yet. But opening statements are there, and now we know George. People are saying already a best guest, and here Mr. Western Voice. And I just found out he co-hosted or not. He had his own radio show alongside Stefan Tubbs on opposite ends of the day. But it makes perfect sense now. You still doing radio, George?
No, one of the things that the FCC does is to make it super unattractive to have a candidate for partisan office be on the airwaves without offering an equal opportunity to the opposing candidates. And so when I talk with 710 KNUS, that's where Steph and I worked, They said, please don't run for office. We'd love to keep you, but if you run for office, get out. And I said, I'll give you enough advance notice. And so we parted company on good terms.
There you go. By the way, not to give a shameless plug to our merch store, but I am wearing the SES Nation hat. And I know this is the one everyone wants, the Space Coast hat. Space Coast on the West Coast. He handles all of our technical issues. But Sky Lazaro, to you, the defense, they came out swinging today. Today's day 2. There was a bit of testimony yesterday and much more today. But today the defense really kind of let the gloves come off, and they went after the deceased, which I guess you can do because they're no longer with us, even though I guess some might see it as shameful, but it is the job of a defense attorney, and said that she's really not the victim here, but quote unquote, a deeply private, emotionally unstable woman who may have been manipulative and possibly suicidal. I mean, these are crazy descriptors. Again, deeply private, emotionally unstable, manipulative, and apparently one of her children has testified to this, not necessarily in court, but to the defense. So, Sky, we talked about this yesterday a little bit, but is this a risky strategy to kick the dead while they're already down?
I think so. The defense came out in their opening statement, basically said that, or really did say that, this was a suicide, that James Craig didn't do it. And if he got something, then it was at her request. But this is a gamble. I think anytime you go after a victim or an alleged victim in a case, especially when they're deceased, it's a gamble. I think you run the risk sometimes of alienating juries. Public comment on it, I think, tends to lean that way as well. But in this case, where that's their theory is that she was suicidal, they have to somehow deal with the fact that, maybe she didn't say anything to anybody about being suicidal other than her husband. So they're going to have to establish that isn't something she would have normally shared. I do think you have to be a little bit careful about how aggressively you go after someone who came to such a sad, tragic end. She was so sick, and it is really, a tragedy anytime someone dies.
Yeah, horrible tragedy. But now again, and we just saw Canine Catherine from Maui, George, talking about, victim shaming. She is the victim here. And one of the problems the defense is going to have is that there is home video, basically like Ring type footage, where she's on there speaking in her own words, essentially saying, hey, I am not suicidal. I'm not in jeopardy of wanting to take my own life. But let's dig in. So there were 2 people that testified yesterday, and then we'll kind of work backwards a little bit. But today, to me, the most interesting witness is a woman named Caitlin Romero. She is the former dental office manager, Caitlin Romero. And she testified today to the fact that she had not a sexual relationship per se, but a very emotional relationship with James Craig while she was his office manager, that they were secretly texting. Let's start there. I mean, from a prosecutorial standpoint, you've already got the woman he was having an affair with, whose last name is Kane, and she was traveling in to see him. And now you've got a second woman in 2 days, and it looks like Stefan is here. Hey, Stefan, how you doing? I don't know that he can hear me yet. COE, I'm going to, yeah, there we go. But George and I were talking about this. It's a tech issue. It's a tech thing. Yeah. But George, to you, he was carrying on this quote unquote emotional relationship. He's been doing this for 23 years. The government went straight to her, and we'll get into some of the details of it in a moment. But are they already chipping away here, basically saying, look, this guy is a complete slime bag, and this is why you should believe that he would do this?
Yes. I mean, listen, character evidence is normally something that you can't get in barring connection to some other thing, motive, identity, that kind of thing. But in this particular case, all of these things go to actual fact witnesses that also highlight some sort of arguable bias that exists. But at the same time, you're now highlighting this guy has I'm not a doctor, but a narcissism about him that commands getting people to want to entrust him with their deepest feelings. He likes to get people emotionally connected to him. We heard that with the woman down in Texas who kind of is her own victim in a way. We heard about it with this woman here. This is something that we know from the opening statement has gone on over and over and over again. And his wife has been just so accommodating and giving him second chances. I think this is all part and parcel of that. If I could just say one other thing, though, about this approach with the victim, because Sky made a lot of good points, but there isn't anything left here, right? I mean, there aren't a lot of cards for these guys to play in trying to defend this guy. They're not going to be able to walk away from the purchases. They're not going to be able to walk away from his statement where he said, as it turns out, I denied it, but I really did buy it, but I bought it because she wanted me to. And I bought it to try to scare her into, not being suicidal. They just don't have a lot of cards to play. So when they attack like the wife of the buddy in the car, when they attack, you didn't really know her that well. You're trying to crack open that door of doubt that you can on the issue of could she have been suicidal? Because there just isn't that much left to play. But who would know more about this is a former patient.
Yeah. Stefan Tubbs, welcome to the show. Happy you are here. Everyone should know that Stefan has been friends with Steve Cohen for decades, which is the most important fact in this entire story. But aside from that, Stefan was a patient of James Craig. So let's hold the presses right there. Was this guy a decent dentist, Stefan? Can you show us your smile?
First of all, before I go on, hi to Steve. It's been way too long. Steve got my son his very first gift, I believe, in the year 2000, and he may remember it was a little Lakers jersey and little high tops. I think they were Shaq O'Neal's. And before we continue, my good friend in the upper right, George, is going to give me pure hell if you continue to call me Stefan. It's Stefan.
No,
Stefan, sorry.
It's Stefan Tubes.
Exactly. Hello, Sky. It's nice to see you. We got the whole band. We got the whole band back together from the 48 Hours piece we did, last year or the year before.
Right. So you guys all know each other, which is great. And apologies on the pronunciation. I'm never good at that, but Stefan, it will be from now on. And by the way, I'm pretty good at math, so your kid's got to be about 25.
Can you believe that?
Wow,
Needless to say, Steve's gift that doesn't fit anymore. In all seriousness, I appreciate the time in joining you all. And first and foremost, when it comes to what kind of dentist was he? Mm-hmm. I did his advertising on the radio for 7 or 8 years. I was the one telling you, go to see Dr. Jim Craig. He's the greatest. I mean, I can almost remember off the top of my head the commercial I did for him. Visit him at summerbrookdental.com. This guy was an absolutely competent, if not very, very good dentist.
For a killer smile.
Well, thank God he's not accused of killing a patient then.
No, well, at least that we know of. But I found out that he was somebody that was very dedicated to his craft. He was fascinated by what I did. I was in the news industry for more than 3 decades. He always wanted, cleanings and then subsequent checks by the dentist. I had to block out 2 hours. He loved to chat. I knew Angela. Rest in peace. I didn't know her well, but we were in several meetings and a couple of social functions. Needless to say, when I opened up my phone, I was out of state. We were out of state on some business. And I remember on this Sunday morning, I wake up and I'm scrolling through Twitter and I see that, Aurora police arrest the dentist. And I open that thing up and I see my dentist mugshot. And honest to God, I still, after more than 2 years, I still can't believe it.
Yeah. Out of the small world category, not to one up Stefan here, but I grew up with Stanford from Sex and the City. May he rest in peace, the guy from Sex and the City. And he was a very good friend of my sister's. Went to our high school. And I found out he passed away reading a TMZ alert while I was doing a live shot.
Right.
So very, very bizarre. But Steve Cohen also told me that Stefan is a newsman's newsman. So I'm very glad he's here. But and I even though we've got the DA and Sky on, who is both amazing guests. Stefan, let me just go back to you. So, this had to kind of shake you to the core. So you get this news. Did you have any inkling at all that he was this kind of person who could be this conniving, this desperate?
No, I mean, the so many bizarre, weird, horrible things. And I do want to say, and I'm sure you guys have talked about it. Look, no matter how much we talk about it, no matter the salaciousness of anything, I mean, there are 6 children. Granted, most of them are of adult age, but they're without their mother. I think Craig's going to find out sooner rather than later that a jury of Coloradans has convicted him. And so they've lost both of their parents. And I think that has never been lost on me. I know in the podcasting that I've done about this, but when it comes to this type of person, no, I mean, of course not. I mean, this is the type of, I mean, I'm sure if you asked his neighbors, oh, they were such a nice, happy family. Look, and when I was in court for the very first time for his initial court appearance, he walks in and he looks different. He just physically looked different. And we made eye contact, and I'm going to tell you, I may lose my man card if I ever had one. I looked away. It was we had eye contact for a good 10 seconds, and I'm like, how long am I going to hold this? How long am I going to hold this? And I looked away. It was just too weird. The last time, this hand to God the truth, the last time I looked at this man in the eyes, he gave me a root canal.
Wow.
No kidding.
It's crazy how close this is. Let me, Stefan, one more question. I'll mix in all the guests here. But what is there about this case that maybe we don't know? It's been obviously, highly sensationalized. We know all the the salacious aspects of it. Is there something about this case that we don't necessarily know that has hit the public view yet?
Was that to me?
Is there? Yeah, to you. Yeah. Is there something we don't know about this case?
I don't know if there's stuff we don't know. I think, one of the things I was shocked at from yesterday's opening statements was that when he was in Angela's literal final moments, he was in medical scrubs, according to the prosecution. And then the theory, and Sky and George may know better than me, but I covered a lot of the preliminary, court appearances. And then because of where I work now, I've been unable to do that. But I had not heard until yesterday that they actually think he injected her. I told my audience on the radio and during our podcast series from, when this whole thing started, my theory was not that it held any water, but I thought he was continually trying to poison her and kill her as he visited her in both the Advent Health in Parker, Colorado, and then at University Hospital. That's from reading everything that I did. That's kind of what, my detective brain kind of put together. But of course, that's just pure speculation.
And Stefan, you got so involved in this that you started a podcast called Arsenic DDS. Were you in court yesterday and today? Are you going to court? And how many episodes? Tell us about the podcast a little bit.
Yeah, I think you can still find it online, Arsenic DDS, like anywhere you get podcasts. And I actually stopped. I left radio after a great career, but I left radio in the fall of 2023. But I was just talking with someone earlier today. I think I'm going to try to get into the courtroom on Friday and at least observe, what I can. I want to be in there for at least a little bit. And how about for you, Mr. Brockler, courtroom 201? Lord knows you did God's work in that case as the district attorney.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday. Look at this. Fairy Glam Psychologist consumed every episode of Arsenic DDS. Great podcast. Hopefully it does not come with actual arsenic since she did consume it. Nikki Cud's here, member for 19 months. But Sky Lazaro, let's work back to you here. So Caitlin Romero is this woman who's on the stand today. She's a former office manager there. So who knows? Stefan may even know her. Apparently he has this emotional relationship James Craig does with this woman, and he starts repeating statements to her on the night of March 9th and 15th, according to testimony today. She won't make it through the night. And you can see here, he told the office, you can put that back up, COE, please. we told the office manager to look out for the package, but not to open it. It was marked personal. This is the woman who was on the stand today. Told his coworker twice he didn't think his wife, Angela, would make it out alive. The office manager noticed the package contained potassium cyanide. Google search shows this causes the symptoms that Angela had. I mean, Sky, another big problem for you guys on the defense side of things here. This is a witness on the stand today who is talking about this flirtatious relationship that they had, the two of them had, and that he is confessing to her that she's not going to make it through the night. In your defense mind, what are you saying right now to these jurors to convince them otherwise when you get the chance to cross her?
This is a tough one, and I think the prosecution a real tough one. I think the prosecution did a really good job of eliciting the fact that there was an emotional connection between the two, because I think that strengthens her testimony in terms of what she observed. I also think it weakens any cross that the defense has when I think they asked her about the box and she couldn't quite, say one way or she couldn't say it was the exact same box or it wasn't marked the exact same way. And so it's hard to score a lot of points with a witness like this because, and I apologize for background noise. This makes it really,
when I heard a motorcycle, I knew it had to be Sky Lazaro.
I'm sorry. It makes it really difficult to score points because this is someone that not only worked for him, who would have those loyalties, but also then you bring in the fact that maybe there was an emotional connection. Unless you can somehow spin that into she's mad at him because she found out he was talking to some other girl, and now this becomes a huge sex triangle of some sort, or at least an emotional connection triangle. I think it's hard to deal with her testimony.
Yeah, George, is this a gift to you as the government here? I mean, you've got this witness on the stand. She admits to having this quote unquote emotional relationship. And I don't know where the line is divided there between emotional, sexual, but obviously it was more than just a coworker relationship. And he's confessing to her that she's not going to make it through the night. This comes on 2 different nights. So I guess he was wrong about his assessment, but nevertheless, he's telling her that. And then he also tells her about the quote unquote package. And it turns out that package contains potassium cyanide. I mean, we talked about this yesterday, George. I don't see it any differently. I'm a juror on this trial. I've already made up my mind, and it's day 2 of testimony here. Is this witness just another gift for you?
Yes. And again, this is that witness that, but for them opening that box, making the observation, doing the things that they do, I don't know, man. Does this guy walk away with this? And the fact that it came at the hands of someone who has an emotional connection, not by chance, but by design. And this is who this guy is. He tries, and you could hear it in Stefan's voice too. He makes an emotional connection with Stefan Tubes when he's his patient. I mean, this guy is engaging. He is charismatic and he likes to suck people in. And so the fact that he's got this thing going on with his office manager, non-physical as it is, I just think it helps feed the narrative of what's going on here. It's still amazing to me how close he came to getting away with this.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Stefan, to you, this office manager, do you happen to know her, Caitlin Romero? Do you know who she is?
I don't know her personally. I'm sure I had interaction if she were. Yeah, I think I was a patient of Jim Craig's for 7 or 8 years. So depending on her history, I always remembered my visits to Summerbrook Dental as very professional, very competent. I mean, I was an endorser for that business. So I was maybe treated a little nicer. I don't know, but Jim always treated me well. Like I said a few moments ago, in kind of remembering our relationship, he was always very caring, very communicative. He was always fascinated by the news. I remember he was always fascinated by news of the day, the business, the media business in general. But I mean, even today, I don't look at that as anything unusual. It was just, here's a guy I'm paying to do my radio ads, and hopefully he's going to get me more customers. And then, in reading the affidavit from a couple of years ago. This thing read like either a really incredible, maybe unbelievable Hollywood script, or a really bad one, because you just wouldn't believe that somebody could be that stupid to do the things that he allegedly, did day after day, week after week. But I know one of the things in that affidavit that I was struck by was the supposed financial difficulties of Summerbrook Dental. I mean, I felt like there was always state-of-the-art technology. Everybody was certainly trained well. Everybody behaved well. I mean, that guy right there, that's the picture. That was if I may, we're all among friends here. Yeah. Jim Craig, I'm not going to say is, but Jim Craig that I knew was a complete and total goober. That's that's who he was. He was just a very competent, nice dentist who was kind of a goober.
Yeah.
There's no other better way that I can put it. And I know that sounds like I'm in 10th grade, but that's who he was.
No, not at all. COE, speaking of 10th grade, if you can pull up the shot of him dressed as a tooth fairy, that will corroborate what Stefan's saying here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, he does dress up as a tooth fairy at one point. But what about his and Stefan, you can help us here. By the way, they just opened a dentist office in Miami, and the name of the company, and they are not paying us for this promotion. The name of the company is called, the dental office is called Drill. Who came up with that idea? Who would want to go to an office called Drill?
Well, that might be better than Summerbrook Dental at this point.
Yeah. It might.
Oil and gas executives? I don't know.
Maybe. Maybe that's about it. So his dental partner, Stefan, what do we know about him? And the two of them apparently had some, I guess, words for each other, and he kind of, the partner was sort of onto Jim at some point.
Yeah, I find that absolutely fascinating. I'll start with the most recent and then go back real quick. This is in maybe his 4th or 5th court appearance here in Arapahoe County. And I'm in court, and a woman, we keep having eye contact. And it was like at the 3rd or 4th eye contact, I'm like, I've got to talk with this woman. Well, it turns out, fast forward, that woman, she came up to me at one of the court breaks. It was Michelle Redfern, Ryan Redfern's wife. And she was incredibly friendly. And I had, when I was still doing my radio show, I had been in kind of hot pursuit of getting either Ryan or Michelle on my show. And she explained the reasons why she couldn't and how tough this was on her. And I completely respected that. But going backward, here's two guys that knew each other, through, starting in dental school. I've questioned, just personally and following the story, how much of the financial problems did Ryan Redfern really know of? I mean, this, to me, on paper, from what what you're able to read through public documents, this would have been a business. If you were thinking of investing and joining a dental practice, I think this would have been the one you'd want to run from. But you've got, then fast forward to, Angela's final night at University Hospital, where they're noticing things. And it was the Redferns who said, we think she's been poisoned. And then the phone call, you can see the, again, in the affidavit, it's just amazing the TikTok of how this is, where, at one point, Ryan Redfern apparently says, Jim, stop talking, get a lawyer. And they're outside the hospital in their car. It's fascinating. It's terrible. It's sad. And, besides the kids, I know I mentioned them earlier, which I don't think we should ever forget, is I think you need to focus, if you're following this case at all, it just is heartbreaking to know that another human being literally went through such suffering and was dying for weeks.
By the way, kudos to you. You got out of media and you're with the DEA. How's the DEA? You like it?
Love it. I can't talk anymore. I'd have to kill you.
We'll get you on for a DEA story next. Is a dental practice still in existence?
No. And there's another, not to try to make it about me, but I'm like, all of my dental records are at Summerbrook Dental. I go over there closed. I try to call, no answer. God knows if I've been part of a dental security breach, but I have been unable, probably like hundreds, if not thousands of other patients. I don't know where my medical records are.
I do. They're in
There's a
courtroom.
basement, yeah.
They're in courtroom 201 in Arapahoe County.
You're probably close to right. Yeah.
Yeah. So back to George and Sky here, and I apologize to George and Sky, but we've got the guy in the know here with Stefan, who I was calling Stefan, which I can't do anymore. So digital evidence, George. George wants me to keep calling him Stefan, so maybe I will.
Don't feed into what Brockler wants. We've known each other too long.
I'm afraid to say his name now because I'll get it wrong.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know. It happened to me yesterday with the other guest. But digital evidence here. So, George, I'm going to run through some of this. First of all, he was using dental exam room 9, which your friend was probably in, to access a computer where he was doing all these crazy searches. He had a secret email account that was not found on his personal devices. And lo and behold, on that account, he was searching for women on a site called seeking.com, George. Seeking.com. And his nickname was Jim and Waffles. Jim and Waffles. So maybe this guy really is a goober. It sounds like he is. Used Sugar Daddy to meet young women. Claimed he was worth $10 million. Known as James and Waffle. On another adult site, had an emotional affair with his coworker, met and started seeing this orthodontist while he was married. Some people say that that is what was sort of the catalyst for all this. But among his searches too, George, were undetectable poisons, how to make poisons, how many grams of arsenic will kill a human. So holding it right there, let's just take a half step back to seeking.com. He goes in as Jim and Waffles, claiming to have a net worth of $10 million. Now, George, again, in and of itself, if I'm a juror, I can't, you should not be convicting on this, obviously, on this piece of evidence. But when you add this evidence to everything going on here and the fact that his wife not so suddenly dies, I mean, this just seems like the government is on easy street here, which I get nervous for you as a DA because you don't want to slip up on easy street. But it seems like such an uphill battle for the defense. If you're in charge of this case, like you were with the Aurora Theater shootings, I mean, what are you doing? And I think I asked you this yesterday. What are you doing here just to dot your I's and cross your T's and make sure that you're hammering these points like seeking.com home to the jurors to show to them that all these pieces individually add up to what you believe is murder?
That's a great question. Remember, for Aurora Theater, though, we had a guy whose only way out of that was to say he was insane. Mm-hmm. So they eat pretty much all the factual evidence and even what he did, but they're trying to explain it away as saying it's a product of some sort of mental disease or defect. This is different than that. And they have to come up with some innocuous or potentially innocuous explanations for this. And so my guess is, a la Diddy's trial, the defense in this case will at some point during their closing say, our client isn't a good husband. He isn't a good dude. He's out there trolling for women all the time because he is so unhappy in this marriage to this controlling woman or whatever it is. So these things they're going to try to explain away a little bit at a time. By the way, I was disappointed to hear when Stefan told me that there's no Sugar Mama's website out there. I Googled it. He's right. There isn't. Maybe it's in Utah. I don't know.
Yeah. Come to Miami. I bet there's one in Miami.
Maybe it's Miami.
Yeah.
But I think that's what they have to do. And so it's not just what he's doing or what he's searching for, but it's the way he's doing it. You talked about the fact that he's in that op room or whatever they call it, doing those searches, but he's doing it at night where he's never there. And that other employee just happens to walk by and freaks out when she sees him in here. All of that stuff cannot have an innocuous explanation. And that's the problem. When he is texting his former buddy in the car and says something along the lines of, for the love of God, if you've ever cared about me, please don't talk to the police. I've asked myself, in what context could that be innocuous? Yeah. I can't come up with one. And that's true of so many of these facts. But if you're the defense, you cannot get stuck in the thought that we can't win this. You have got to hook on to a couple different things to build just enough that, God willing, you catch at least one of those jurors in doubt and see where that takes you.
Someone said that they would never marry a dentist. There's too much close contact, I guess, with too many people. But I guess that's a good argument. Sky Lazaro. So among the search histories, and we went through some of them yesterday, but these are all important. He's searching on this quote unquote random computer. We know that no computer is ever random, but it's in one of the clinic rooms at the office. He's searching undetectable poisons, how to make poison, how many grams of arsenic will kill a human. That's really the one that gets me. The last one, or the middle one here, how many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human? When you're sitting in your law office in Utah, whether it be Corey Richins or Jim Craig, I mean, you have to come up with an answer for this. It seems really tough. That's why you're the criminal defense attorney and I'm not, because I can't come up. I mean, what are you going to say? This guy was just curious about arsenic. He had just seen Arsenic and Old Lace on Broadway. I have no idea. What do you say?
I actually don't hate this piece of evidence. If we're talking about searches and digital footprints and digital forensics, if he had not gone on the site and continued to be the creepy guy that the prosecution's doing a really good job of making him and use this name, you know, he's on a computer that's not his, that is accessible to other people who are in the dental clinic. He is using not his personal email account. There's arguments there that I think you could make. And I think they addressed this in a suppression hearing prior to trial that they lost, trying to keep this stuff out. That look, you can't show that that's him, and if you can't draw that nexus, then it shouldn't be admissible. Unfortunately, he did all these other things on that same computer with that same email address, which then tends to point to him. The timing of it, I mean, I've dealt with Google searches. Here's the problem always as a defense lawyer. Mm-hmm. You can have the best case in the world, and it will be your client's own words that sink it, whether it's a text message, a jail phone call, a Google search. You know, you can deal with a lot of circumstantial evidence and call it just that and say, hey, look, he's unlucky, or somebody else did it, or there just isn't quite enough to show it was him. You know, they can't lay enough of the timeline, whatever it is you want to argue. The problem is when you have your client doing these things, there is no way to keep it out of court, and it is really, really damaging to it when a jury hears it.
Yeah. What I'm about to bring up might be my favorite comment in the history of Surviving the Survivor. If we leave the photo up as well, Nap Connoisseur wins a prize for this COE. He looks like a hairy big toe. An amazing comment. Absolutely. It's a stunning piece of, I don't know, literary commentary with visual commentary there as well. McSpunky, member for 26 months. Who knew it could be this long, McSpunky, that we have known each other? Stefan, to you, life insurance. That's come up a lot. Was there a life insurance policy in play? Because we know we've all seen Keith Morrison enough times to know that it's always the life insurance policy. So was that a factor in this at all?
Yeah, Sky and George may know a little more than I do about this, besides what I've read in the affidavit. But I believe that there was, and forgive me, I can't remember how much it was, but I believe, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there were life insurance policies out on both, but definitely out on Angela Craig as well. George and Sky may know more than I do.
Yeah. George, do you know about this at all? Life insurance policies?
I remember there being talk of the insurance policy in the affidavit. I can't remember what the amount of it was, but it does feed into this narrative that this guy has a whole life's worth of troubles that he can walk away from through a couple different things here. As I was listening to Sky talk about their own words in the Google searches, the only thing that we haven't discovered through tossing his computer, and I imagine if they went to the jail, they'd find this, is a search called "How to Look Innocent at the Defendant's Table in Court" or something like that.
No one ever does that. It would be helpful.
Yeah. So, Sky, from your perspective, it sounds like one of the motives here is, maybe, you know, this guy thinking he's more of a catch than he is and wanting to be with this woman who he meets in Utah. But the other certainly sounds like financial motive, and who knows what, you never really know what's going on, right? If this guy was spending too much, if he was in jeopardy of, you know, bankruptcy, that sort of thing. So from a defense perspective, you've got to know the financial situation with your client. How are you getting to the bottom of it to be prepared for what the government might throw at you? I mean, obviously you've got the discovery process, but how big a factor is this in this particular case, the financial side of things?
I think anytime you have a murdered or a alleged murdered spouse, you have to deal with this issue of life insurance if it exists. And I think there's a couple things that the defense can point to. Timing of when those policies were purchased. You know, if these are two policies that had been, you know, they each had a policy worth $1 million and they'd been in place for 20 years or even 5 years or whatever it is, I think that tends to be a little bit easier to deal with than these recently purchased policies because, you know, even if it's innocuous, it doesn't look like it. I think it's normal for spouses, especially they have 6 children. I don't think it's unheard of for each spouse to have a life insurance policy on the other, you know, in the event that one of them passes away. The stuff with the relationships, I think that's also something that you can water down as the defense. The fact that he'd been doing this, it's certainly, if he'd been doing it for years or his marriage or at least twice that we know of, and it never was a reason to leave before or a desperate reason to try to get out of the marriage or her threatening to leave him over it or anything like that, you know, it doesn't look good. It doesn't make him look like a good person, but you can be a bad person and a bad husband and really bad at your financial affairs, and that it doesn't make you a murderer. So when you defend these cases from the financial standpoint, you know, I subpoena everything. I want to know every single transaction, bank account, annuity, everything that's out there, because, you know, businesses as they grow can go through financial ups and downs. You know, and just because you look at it on one day and say, oh, the business was in trouble, he didn't have any money at home, you know, there was all these problems, that isn't always necessarily true, even if it looks like that for a short period of time. You know, perhaps they'd reinvested in the business, perhaps they were trying to grow, perhaps they'd, you know, purchased some, you know, you said it was cutting edge, you know, they bought new technology, whatever that is. You want to know exactly what's going on with investors if he had them, with his business partner, what the financial, the long-term financial blueprint, if you will, or of the business, and also his personal life. Because if you let the prosecution just come in and say, hey, he was broke, $1 million saves everything, he gets out of his marriage, he's got money, and he gets to live happily ever after, that's really convenient. However, it requires a lot of work on the defense side and sometimes a forensic accountant to come in and explain, you know, why a business might look a certain way or a portfolio might look a certain way and what was going on at the time.
Don't mind me. I'm just reading all the comments about life insurance, and the COE is asking how she can get more, which makes me a little nervous. For those,
she should talk to me first.
Yes, she should. George and Steph in the COE, the chief of everything, is my wife who runs the show. Black Widow comes to us from the Republic of Ireland. Divorce is easier than LWAP. I'm going back to Stefan, but George, you're the patriarch now. You're the former and current DA of 2 different jurisdictions. Can you answer this question? Divorce is easier than life without parole. Why do all these idiots, men and women, why are they committing these crimes instead of, I don't know, filing for personal bankruptcy if you have to, you know, or just why take the road of murdering? What are they not calculating in the fact that they will get caught? I mean, what are they not seeing?
Well, look, a lot of people do choose the road of divorce over murder. Otherwise, we would have bodies stacked like cordwood all over the community. And that's probably a good thing that they're choosing the divorce. But I think a guy like this, who I think we're getting a fuller picture of him every day, this is a guy who has been so successful at being charismatic and convincing others of his quality as a person and his skills. I imagine part of that becomes his id, and his ego. And he loses the ability to step out from behind this and say, I'm in real trouble here. I just need to move on. Instead, he's like got all these plates spinning. Do you know what I mean? Like the old Ed Sullivan. He's got all these plates spinning and he thinks he can keep it going. And he's going to add one more plate. And that is, hey, if I can take my wife out of the picture, I can solve some financial problems. I can free myself up to be the widow or the widower. I can hook up with some of these other sugar mamas. I don't know. But I think this is more about him than it is a broader discussion of people choosing murder over divorce. There's something wrong with this guy between the ears. And I still go back to and I saw the comments too. I like this. Some people are like, I think he'd have been caught anyway because of all the sloppy searches he had. Mm-hmm. I'm not convinced of that. And the reason I'm not convinced of that is cops just don't get to show up at your house and say, hey, your wife died under mysterious circumstances. We'd love to look around. That's not how it works. There has to be probable cause to dig into that stuff. And I'm not sure they get it without the information that comes forward from that office manager. So dude could have gotten away with it. And I wonder how many others are out there like this. One other thing I'd say is when you asked me to do this, and I love this, I want you to keep doing this. I was not offered the wind machine that Sky was. I don't know if you guys know this, but Sky was leaning forward, getting the hair was blowing. And I'm like, what?
George, you got to grow your hair back out, George. That's the problem.
Got a long ponytail in the back. You can't see it.
He can't. I think that's as long as
until it sticks to my lipstick. Then it's not
anymore. Julia the nurse. We're back to the Stefan Tubbs show. Did I call it Stefan? Sorry, my bad. I'm from Jersey, so yeah, forgive me if I do it again. He was a gambler, owed some casino in Vegas. Yeah. I had not heard this. Stefan, do you know this to be true that he had a big gambling debt? Is that true?
Just from what's available via the affidavit. But speaking of Vegas,
yeah,
the one thing that I think, and as a former media member, and I still consider myself a newsman. One of the things that I think has been very unfortunate in this, and of course it happens, I get it. It's the salacious nature of this case. It's sexy. It's got all the elements of everything that make up a 2-hour, movie or bad miniseries. But I think one of the people that in general got immediately, and I'll say this, I'm going to criticize, but I'm going to criticize myself first. I don't consider Karen Kane a mistress. She knew Jim Craig fewer than a month. I think 23 days or something like that. Mm-hmm. She was told lie after lie after lie. Yet the media pursued her just absolutely disgustingly and relentlessly in the Austin area. This woman just met this dude who, again, is charismatic and lying through his teeth. Mm-hmm. They barely knew each other. Now, I find it hard to believe that she fell in love with him in less than 3 weeks. But who am I? Who are you? Who's anybody? Apparently she did. So I think, I apologize, though I knew she wasn't listening during my show, man. I after calling her for a mistress for a few weeks, I'm like, she is owed an apology. And she's also going to be, I believe she's on the witness list and will testify in court. The other thing is, I don't know if you guys have talked about this either yesterday or today. How about allegedly trying to kill Detective Bobby Olson?
That was my next question to you.
Nuts?
Yeah.
Putting out a hit. But he's just an innocent, misunderstood, going into debt. He hates his wife, but he does. Are you kidding me? And then, let me just tell you, if I have a second, I got a call, strike that. I got a Facebook message out of the blue about 6 months ago. I don't know this person. I'm hardly ever on Facebook. I happened to see a message. It came in a couple of weeks earlier. It was from a guy, random. I think he just had seen Arsenic DDS podcast series. He says, hey, I just got out of the Arapahoe County Detention Facility. You need to call me. Jim Craig tried to solicit me to, and I'm like, what? So I contacted some of my friends over at the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office. I'm like, A, is this joker, was he in contact with Jim Craig? Was he even incarcerated? Blah, blah, blah. Needless to say, I haven't pursued it yet. But he's like, I didn't go to the cops. He's like, I hate the cops. I'm like, clearly you don't know where I work now, but I hate the cops. I want to tell you this. And that went nowhere. I bring it up because Jim Craig is accused of asking one of his children to cover for him. Mm-hmm. Jim Craig is accused of trying to get other inmates to do various things and hits. And I mean, at what point, I don't know, did logic leave this man's mind? And then I don't know if Sky or George feel this way, but certainly here in Colorado, I remember it because it was only 5 years ago. What does Jim Craig have to lose in this? Do you know what he does not have to worry about losing? His life. That's right. There's no death penalty in Colorado. That's right. So, I mean, at this point, try to kill the lead detective, get your kids to lie, try to convince a stupid inmate to do your dirty work for you. He has nothing to lose, and he's already been in jail for, 2+ years. So why not just come up with any way to try to maybe somehow convince that one juror that maybe there's something to it and he didn't do it?
Yeah, well, that's after delivering all that info, I think it's more and more unlikely. I'm glad that you brought up Karen Kane. That is the woman that he is accused of having this affair with, who really did not know. I don't think
she was an innocent victim.
Yeah, an innocent victim.
I was just going to say that. I think she qualifies probably as another one of his victims, and in a broad sense of the word.
Yeah, and she's I think supposed to be on the stand tomorrow, as soon as tomorrow. So we're going to hear from her, and that's going to be interesting. There's so many different places to go, but for those who were just listening to Stefan and kind of said to themselves, what's this guy talking about? Well, while he was locked up in the county jail for this crime awaiting trial, he apparently did try to put out a hit. And George, I'll come to you on this, on the lead detective, Bobby Olson. It's a woman, I believe, Bobby Olson. And and then later also trying to get people within the jail to essentially witness tamper, somehow get witnesses to say that his wife was in fact suicidal, when no one, really thinks that she is, except maybe his defense team. But I mean, George, the murder aside, just the fact that this guy wanted to put a hit out on an active, or at least then active, homicide detective investigating the case. I mean, that's such a serious crime in and of itself. What do you have to do as a DA in that county to follow through just on that particular crime?
My sense of it here is that this is obviously going to be something that grows out of a combination of things that has to include a snitch, someone in the jail who wanted to cooperate in addition to that. And that gives the defense an opportunity to try to attack the basis for it. But you would rarely just move forward just on someone that came forward and said, oh, this guy approached me. The amount of effort that law enforcement puts in to try to corroborate and determine if this person is credible is significant, because this happens more often than you might think. And I think it goes back to something that Stefan said. I think people that are like, where was the common sense here? Where was the logic here? I think Stefan gives a good answer, which is, guys got nothing to lose. But secondly, remember that, whether it's meth, love, or desperation, those three things make you make decisions you wouldn't make in any other circumstance. And so for this guy, he is stuck in a jail looking at eternity behind bars. There aren't any options you wouldn't consider at some point, except for this guy. My guess is the one option he won't consider, because of the narcissism thing, is probably taking his own life. And I'm not encouraging him to do that or anything. I'm not looking for that. I'm just saying he didn't strike me like that, because that would have happened a long time ago, is my guess.
Yeah. On cross today, the defense got a lot in. I'm going to go to Sky on that in just a moment. But Stefan, a couple of things here that I have questions on. Apparently there's no traces of this arsenic found on the actual, protein shakes or the shakes that he was giving to her. And then you mentioned it earlier. There's talk about this sort of last and fatal injection that apparently he administers in the hospital, which Sky talked about yesterday, saying that the government better have the receipts for that for the jury, to convict here. But what do you know? And I hate putting you on the spot, but you're the podcaster on this particular story. What if anything do you know about the traces or no traces of arsenic or poison being found on these containers, and why?
Yeah. So if memory serves, they get their warrant and they seize evidence inside the Craig home in Aurora, and there are, I would assume, and I'm sure Sky would concur, that's pretty good for the defense. Wait a minute, you're telling me, and your theory is in, this dozens of page affidavit that he's poisoning her, yet why, when we go and run the testing and so forth, there's no traces of that in any of the containers that they seized, et cetera. Then I remember when the final autopsy results came out, I remember driving over the day that it was made public and getting this, and I'm reading and I'm seeing a word in there that now I didn't even know how to pronounce it at first, but the tetrahydrozoline was in fatal levels. Well, that is, and as the not only the coroner of Arapahoe County testified in one of the pretrial hearings, but was also in, I believe, the affidavit. But it's tetrahydrozoline is the ingredient that gets the red out that's commonly in eye drops. And so then the theory, certainly among the courtroom sleuths that I was sitting next to at the time, they're like, yeah, he's just pouring in this tetrahydrozoline, and maybe that was the cause. That was the cause of death. But as far as the lack of protein drink containers or mixers or whatever, I would think that that's something the defense would kind of go, hey, you say this, and then there was yesterday, and again, if I missed it in some past hearing, shame on me. But in the opening statement yesterday by the deputy district attorney, I'm telling you, when I heard the allegations are he's dressed in scrubs and he injects her with cyanide, that was absolutely, to me, and again, I don't know if that was brand new. It was certainly new to my ears.
Yeah, I had not heard that, and I haven't gotten an explanation. Not that it's any of your guys' fault. I just haven't gotten an explanation as to how people, how the government knows this. If anyone in STS Nation, I would say best guess, better community, says it right over my shoulder. If you guys know, please email me, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. I'm curious about that. Stefan, back to you real quick on that comment from Brielle that was just up. She says, this man is truly evil. How surreal is it for you? I'll preface it by saying, my wife and I are now in the true crime genre, and we went to pick our girls and boy up from summer camp. Well, he came along with us. And, we talk about things like murder since we're in the world of true crime. So somehow my principal was actually murdered, my high school principal, when I was in high school in 1987. It was a huge story. My kids are undoubtedly going to be more screwed up than me, having grown up with me as their parent. But the point I'm making is it hit so close to home. I remember it was a huge story. It was on the cover of the New York Post. I grew up in Jersey, big deal. But for you, how surreal is it to know that this guy literally had his fingers in your mouth and he is potentially a face of evil, and and it just went totally unnoticed? How do you negotiate that, I guess, in your mind?
Yeah, that's a good word, is negotiate. I mean, I'm thinking back of being a patient, and look, I appreciate the question. It's not about me. Nobody cares really personally, I think, how I feel. But again, I go back to, my God, I mean, I remember seeing family photos. I saw the photos of the 6 kids. I know, I'm sure you guys have even been showing the picture of the big happy Craig family. One of the things that I keep thinking about is that old kind of, it's almost cliche, but you never know what people are going through, right? You see somebody, or somebody cuts you off in traffic or whatever, and you're pissed or what have you, or the perfect family is certainly anything but. They're maybe perfect on the surface. There's all kinds of things going on. But if you were to have told me 15 years ago that 15 years from that moment, we would be talking about this family man, multiple kids. We dealt with, from my radio station's perspective, we dealt with them as clients. In the 60 seconds or so that I did his commercials, I considered myself an employee of him. And I know how he was so invested. At least he talked like this. He was invested in his family. He loved Angela. He loved his business. He was proud to do what he did. He was a caring dentist. I mean, so all of those things, putting it into a pot and then looking into that, it's just, there's no better way than to describe it as surreal. And again, I consistently go back, and I have, and I won't stop, is I've seen some of the kids in court, I'm like, not that it matters, but as George and Sky know, there's a prosecution kind of side of the courtroom and a defense side of the courtroom. And, where do the kids sit? We know certainly where the Prey family, Angela's family, we know where they're sitting. They're sitting behind the prosecution's table. But what do the kids do? And how are these kids ever, even if Jim Craig is acquitted, how will these kids ever, these are the things that I think about. How will these kids ever have a normal, peaceful life when their lives have been shattered, and no matter what happens, they're always without a mom?
Yeah, a horrific cycle of violence. The mother is gone. The father will no doubt be gone in a matter of probably less than 2 weeks. One more thing I want to cover here, and then we'll get some final thoughts. But Sky, this is to you, but you and George can battle back and forth here. So some of this came up in opening statements yesterday, but then on cross today, these points were hammered home. And this is defense attorney Ashley Whittam here. She basically says, look, this guy cheated for 23 years, but loved his wife. On the fact that this woman, the dentist that he was quote unquote in love with in recent weeks, as motive, they say it was simply not the case. And the defense goes on to say that Jim Craig was candid with Angie, that he had been cheating. Then they kind of turn they turn the heat up a little bit, Sky. They say she was broken. She was not about to tell people about her marital struggles. And then you're going to hear her own daughter describe her, and that she was manipulative, that she would manipulate words. And if she wanted to get something, she would be manipulative. And therefore, you should consider suicide, that it was suicide. There was no indication, Sky, at all, but this is the job for a criminal defense attorney. It's what I asked you at the beginning. By saying that she was broken and this woman is now dead, and that she was deeply private and religious and struggling emotionally, and she did this all to herself, how big a risk is that with these jurors? And is there any other play?
I think I said this early on, but it is a risk. You do risk, I think, as soon as you start going after someone who's dead, especially a mother and a seemingly very wonderful person, you run a risk of jurors just tuning you out. That being said, I think George brought up earlier, you don't have a lot of plays. And, is Stefan, did I get that right?
Stefan, yeah, there you go.
Okay. As he mentioned, you don't know what people are going through at home. And so I think the defense almost has to, in some way, touch on this. Now, I don't know how far you go. I think there's a line where you can't cross. But I do think raising the issues, things like religion, things like the way she was raised, her family life, people who don't believe in divorce, she's, maybe she's living this life in her own hell. I mean, I hate to use the word on your show, but, maybe she's living this life that she just can't cope anymore. She doesn't want to get divorced because she doesn't want to let her family down, or she doesn't believe in it, or there's religious pressures to stay. She knows he's been cheating on her, or at least having emotional connections with other women, whatever it is. And she's miserable, and she's trying to portray this perfect life because he's outgoing and he's charismatic and people love him. And there's this image to uphold of having this perfect facade of a life instead of dealing with real life as everybody has to deal with. And she just couldn't take anymore. There probably is something to that. The other thing is, I think if you want to go after a mother, who better than their daughter, right? In some aspects, to talk about, especially if there were struggles with the relationship or something along those lines. But I do think there's a line to it. I think you have to be very careful. You can use it as an explanation or to maybe characterize what their actual life was like. But I don't know that you could go so far as to, start beating up a dead mother and wife.
Yeah. Nan R here with an interesting point. Someone who's against divorce because of religion would feel the same about self-deletion. And she was apparently a very devout member of the LDS church, or at least said to have been a devout member of the church. George, to you, and then I promise we're going to get final thoughts in just a second here. It was notable that with this witness today, George, the office manager, they talked about how it was an emotional relationship. That's an interesting word. It wasn't just a relationship. It wasn't a physical relationship, but is that a calculated move by the government here to frame it as an emotional relationship? And what's the benefit to the government by doing so?
Well, I think it just goes towards this guy being a little more diabolical and conniving. This guy just isn't looking for a warm body to lay next to for 3 to 5 minutes. This guy is invested in trying to get people to really like him and to want to share things with him. I think what's interesting about this case is the defense is left, and this goes to Skye's point, having to come up with an alternate suspect, and that alternate suspect is the victim. So they have this weird card to play, and having James Craig be the guy that is getting all of these different women to become emotionally connected to him, I don't think it looks good for him. I think that for them to suggest, and I suppose this is possible, right? Like to suggest that, yep, he's out there philandering all the time, but he really loves his wife. I think it would be more likely if this guy were just, and hear me out here, if this guy were just out there visiting prostitutes, right? It was the physical connection, but everything else is back home. Maybe you make that argument, but that emotional connection kind of defeats that in my mind, because he is a one-person swinger couple. Do you know what I mean? Like it's an open marriage for one of them, but not for the other one. And I think none of those things go towards making him seem more attractive as a defendant or someone who's innocent or a victim of her. The final thing I'd say is this. As a dad, I can't imagine leaving the planet and my 4 kids that I know of here in Colorado. What I can't see times 10 is a mom leaving her 6 kids, many of whom are younger than my own, out of some sense of spite or revenge, or I'm going to, get him, or I'm so miserable. That's just really tough for me to swallow. And I think a jury is going to feel that way too.
With you 100%. Final question, then we'll get final thoughts. Stefan, to you, as if this case couldn't get crazier, Jim Craig's attorney, a guy named Robert Working, and we talked about this yesterday with George and Skye, is now charged with arson. I don't know if the charges where they stand. This is literally his criminal defense attorney. His wife is his partner, so his wife has stayed on the case. It's both incredible and sad at the same time, because it sounds like this guy just snapped another person in this whole story who just snapped, maybe because he's been doing criminal defense work too long. When you heard about that, what went through your mind? Well, got to unmute yourself because that was good.
What was this?
Oh, you were muted.
Oh,
what went through your mind when you got that news?
Well, as I just said off mic, my first reaction was, get the F out. that was my reaction. It still is. You got to be kidding me. Then I thought, you got a guy who was arrested. His burning house is behind him. He's the attorney for Jim Craig. He's the third attorney, I believe, for Craig. And he's sitting there. Look, I'm not making light of someone with a mental illness or going through, I'm not making light of that. I am making light of the fact that you've got to be kidding me that this is happening. And then, and maybe I'm wrong, but aren't they still married? And so meanwhile, the husband is arrested for arson. He's literally sitting in front of his burning house when the fire department shows up. He's got a trial, not of the century, but one of the bigger trials in Colorado in a long, long time within a couple of week period. But then the wife is going to go ahead and continue the case. You've got to be kidding me. The other thing is, I know it's not time for final thoughts, but I'll give you mine. Yeah. Anyone watching this that thinks that Angela wanted to die, you are an idiot if you think and buy that defense. Angela wanted to die, so Jimmy went and bought all the poison. Give me a break. This guy, in my opinion, is more than guilty. If he's guilty, he deserves death. Unfortunately, in Colorado, he will not get that.
Yeah, we're covering another death penalty case. I'm flying out to Boise on Monday for the sentencing of Brian Koberger. We're going to have shows for you all week while I am out there. And we've got to get you all caught up on Ellen Greenberg's case, which we're working on doing. George Brockler, if you've never heard of Ellen Greenberg, you must Google immediately. Same with Stefan. Sky knows about it. She was stabbed 20 times back in 2011. 10 to the very back of her neck and head. They ruled it a homicide outside of Philadelphia. It was then switched over to undetermined and then ruled a suicide. And guess what? She had a fiance. It was never investigated. The fiance's uncle was a judge, and there's a lot of corruption. It's always shady in Philadelphia, as I like to say. But just a few months back, guess what? The medical examiner, under pressure of a civil suit, came out and said, yeah, it was definitely not a suicide. We just wrote that down, but it was definitely not a suicide. So that case is getting much more interesting. It happened back in 2011. I urge everybody to take a look at that case. Ellen Greenberg, Google it if you haven't already. This is the Jim Craig, really should be called the Angie Craig story, but we always put the suspect names in there, the people who are standing trial for murder. In this case, it is Jim Craig. Sky Lazaro is a criminal defense attorney out of the great state of Utah. She at one time was defending Corey Richins, who was accused and will stand trial in the poisoning death of her husband, Eric Richins, using allegedly 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl. So Sky has been around these types of cases. There is home video, like surveillance video, Sky, and on that you can hear Angie saying, no one in their right mind would ever think I'd kill myself before I killed you. So she's, in her own words, you said that earlier on, Sky, your cases always seem to get ruined by the actual defendant. In this case, it's someone speaking from the grave saying there's no way she would have killed herself. What can you do with that if you're the defense, and your final thoughts here?
I think that's pretty tough. I don't know how you get past it. I think that's probably why they are maybe floating this she's manipulative narrative. To George's point earlier about the emotional affair, I think in some ways calling it an emotional affair is far more damaging to him than him just engaging in sexual acts with women he doesn't care about, right? Because an emotional affair, I don't, if you're having an emotional affair, it's a little bit tough to say, but I love my wife. If you just have a sex problem, maybe you can still say, but I still love my wife. But the two, I think, get pretty difficult to balance in a juror's brain, where he's got kind of all of this stuff going on. These recordings in the house, and somebody commented earlier, and I don't know that I was aware of this, that somebody else put those recordings up, like maybe another family member, and the question was whether or not Angela knew. I don't know the answer to that, If she didn't know, that's probably even more problematic because now she's saying it without a motive to say it. I just don't see this case going well for the defense. I think they're doing the best they can. I do want to make one point, though, talking about his attorney in the arson case. There were a couple things that went through my mind when I read that. One, I mean, it's his attorney. So we have a problem, especially if there's some mental health issues. And how long have they been going on? The second is his wife is still on the case. And I do not want this to come across as me questioning anything about his defense team. I think they are doing the very best job that they can with what they have. I mean, one of my favorite old trial lawyers here in Utah said, well, you can't file a motion to change the facts. Very true. You are stuck with what you have.
But Scott, you bring up a really good point. And I do interrupt. I mean, is there an appellate case to be made by letting this case go on right now?
A little bit. I mean, I certainly think that they're building in some appeal issues into this case. One, how much this other attorney who is now charged with arson was doing. And now you have his wife, who's still on the defense team. She's got her husband who is dealing with, some supposed mental health issues. Her house is completely destroyed. And she's trying probably one of the bigger murder cases of her career. That raises questions, and I think is going to be an appellate issue. I don't know if it carries the day. I mean, we see appellate courts all the time come back and say, all right, yeah, it was a breach of your duty to your client, or it was prosecutorial misconduct, or it was ineffective assistance of counsel, but the evidence was so overwhelming that a reasonable jury could have convicted him anyway, that therefore it's harmless error. I don't know, but those were kind of some of the things that went through my mind when I saw this. And this happened just recently in a death penalty case that was tried in Utah County, where the person who was on parole was on meth and hit those two little kids in the corral. And they charged him not just with vehicular homicide, but with this depraved murder, which is far worse. And his defense attorney, right before his father got really ill, right before one of the trial settings, and he just straight up told the judge, I can't do this trial. If you make me do it, I'm going to be ineffective. All I can think about is my dying father. I can't be trying this murder case. The judge denied the continuance. It went up on appeal. Wow. They overruled it. That judge is no longer a judge. He has retired shortly thereafter. But to that point, when you start talking about things like that and our ethical duty to clients, I do think that raises some possible appellate issues.
Yeah. Wow. That's a really good insight. Not having one to do with the other, but there's some breaking news. Maureen Comey, Jim Comey's daughter, who prosecuted the Sean Diddy Combs trial, apparently was just let go by the Southern District of New York. That was, I guess, considered a loss, and she just lost her job. That is the reporting. I tweeted that out at Podcast STS, Surviving the Survivor. It is Instagram. It is at Surviving the Survivor. Look at this. Lest you think we are not a global show. It is 2:21 in the morning in Spain. Elena, welcome to you. And you got to get some sleep soon, unless you're getting up and then the world is upside down. It is summertime, by the way. So I'm going to give you a shameless plug, because a friend of mine just who's had my book sitting on his bookshelf for, I don't know, a year and a half. He said, I finally read it and I can't stop reading it. It has the same title as the podcast, Surviving the Survivor. If you want to hear a mother yelling at their middle-aged son, you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of it while you're at the beach or in Colorado up at the tippy tops of those mountains. I got to leave the final word for George, because he is the district attorney. So, Stefan, I'm going to give you a final word here. Anything else that you would like to add? You've been covering the case. He has a podcast, Arsenic DDS. Also, both these guys have fantastic voices, which comes from being in radio. But now Stefan is a DEA undercover top secret agent, so we can't ask him about that. But Stefan, I don't know, anything we missed here today or anything you want to add? It's we talk about it in the true crime sense where we sit around and but these are real people, and their lives are real. The kids' lives are real, and they're all shattered. And it's really quite sad, actually.
Yeah, I would just kind of to reiterate, and thank you for having me. I appreciate being on with you. Don't forget the kids. Don't forget Angela. Don't think Karen Kane is the evil villain in this. And all signs point to Jim Craig did all of this and thought he'd get away with it. And I will say, much like in the Oklahoma City bombing case, where Trooper Charlie Hanger was fairly lucky in pulling over this piece of crap vehicle heading northbound out of Oklahoma City with no license plate, and a guy named Timothy McVeigh was in there, and he just so happened to have a weapon. That just so happened led to his arrest. I think McVeigh would have eventually been found. I don't know in this case if Craig doesn't make the idiotic mistakes that I think he made, and I think millions of people think he made. I think he just may have gotten away with this. So don't forget the kids, and I appreciate your having me tonight. Love
having you on. Sorry for calling you your name Jersey style, but I'll correct it and continue to correct it.
All
Hopefully that you, George, and Scott will come back. George gets the last word here. George Brockler, former district attorney in this very, very county, Arapahoe County, which was the Aurora Theater shootings trial, which George prosecuted. I'm going to leave it open-ended to you, George. These cases are always intriguing. This one has so many twists and turns, but like your friend Stefan just said, at the end of the day, this guy, no doubt, is going away. I have no doubt about that. And there's, the wife is gone, and now the kids, 6 of them, basically have to fend for themselves. I guess do you have a message of hope, George? How about that?
Well, it's a tough one. It's such a unique set of facts and so dark. And I think that these cases, in some ways, tend to be less scary than the ones where you can't come up with a motive, or it just seems completely random, because those are the ones where you go, well, my God, if we can't figure out why it happened, how will we ever stop it again? Or how will we ever identify it before it happens? This one, we know. Dude's got a black heart beating behind his sternum. And he was completely self-obsessed, and he was willing to kill not only his wife of a cajillion years, but the mother of his kids to satisfy the things that he thought he was missing in his life emotionally. And so when you have that, we can be on the chats and talk about how bad he is and stuff like that, but it's not that scary. This guy needs to be held accountable. I wish we still had the death penalty. I'm not sure that this district attorney would have sought it. I do want to comment, though, on something folks can watch. And I know a bunch of people have been on here. Why can't we see this thing streaming? I'm going to end with something that I'd said before. If you Google Colorado Judicial WebEx, there's a different channel than you would get to for live streaming. I shot that information to Joel. Just go to Arapahoe County Courtroom 201, log in your name, and I'm telling you, they'll let you in and you can watch this thing. But with this attorney issue, with this Rob Working, a couple things going on in the background. This dude is alleged to have started this arson in this county where this happened. The concern has to be now, can this DA prosecute him for arson, him having been the defense attorney on this case? And beyond that, he was also a political supporter of hers when she was running for district attorney. This seems to me to be a case that is likely going to be kicked over to Denver, which is just north of Arapahoe County. I think the other thing to remember, though, too, is while I think this is a no doubt ineffective assistance claim if and when he's convicted, what the court's going to do is look at this and say, was there something so deficient about their performance that it would have changed the outcome in this case? And given 2 things, the strength of the evidence in this case, and 2, frankly, Lisa Moses and Ashley, her partner, they're doing a pretty darn good job. Those 2 things, I think, probably ward off the evil spirits that surround an ineffective assistance claim long term.
Really well said. I don't hear half the things you're saying because your voice is so soothing and mellifluous, George, that just relaxes me. Stefan hates it because he's a radio guy and he's like, don't blow this guy's head up any bigger. But you do have a great voice. Did you train that voice, or is that just natural?
Hey, let me answer that for him.
Yeah,
many weeks in front of the mirror.
Don't listen. I have very few superpowers, but I've had this voice since I was 13. And what that means is in high school, I was the guy that all my buddies said, call into the school and excuse me from class for the rest of the day. So I'd call in and I'd be like, hi, this is John Noonan, Roger's dad. We have a dental appointment. That's been going on forever.
By the way, were you like a good student in high school, or were you one of those guys that could have been DA or could have been, something else?
I graduated at the tippy top of the second half of my class. I was very good.
Yeah, there you go. Huge thanks to all of these guests, which I'll go through in a moment. Just tomorrow, kind of a somber note for STS. Our original case is, believe it or not, involves another dentist murdering people. That is Charlie Adelson, in the murder of Dan Markell, former FSU law professor. And tomorrow is the anniversary of his death, at least on the Jewish calendar, which is what his family celebrates. So we're doing kind of a roundtable, just remembering Dan, focusing more on Dan and less on the suspects, as his former ex-mother-in-law, 75 years old, gets ready to go on trial in Tallahassee. I will be there August 19th. I'll be in Boise next week for Koberger's sentencing. I'll be in Orlando the week after that for Stefan Stearns. And Ned Smith, who is a longtime guest on this show, not a guest, but a STS Nation member. You know what I mean, Ned Smith. And her name is Ned, but she's a she and not a he. I guess I could be sensitive these days, but you know what I'm getting at. Ned Smith, she always wants me doing more shows. She said, is Joel doing the American Idol show after this show? I have, in the process of doing this podcast, gained about 11,000 new mothers, some Jewish, some not, who like to torture me. But no, that we're not doing it today, and I'll tell you why. They made a quick arrest in that case. It looked like it was kind of the neighborhood crack addict who it was a botched robbery, shot and killed those two. It's in Encino, California. If anything else develops, we will get on that case immediately. But Ned Smith, stop giving me extra work, please. I'm also about to sign out, and the COE did something. So just like yesterday, we'll probably still be on air talking, thinking that we're off air. But with that, I will say, love you, America. Love you, Colorado. Arapahoe. I can never say it. Arapahoe County, Utah. I can say that. Sky, Stefan, George, Stefan, sorry for butchering your name. Thank you all for being here. We'll get you back on. Love you, America. Have a safe, great upcoming weekend. Be nice. Don't kill anyone. That's it.